What's shaking? Joy Revolution podcast with your boy Marc Cordon. If you don't know me, I work with folks to get their voice on big stages like TEDx's podcast, and those things be used to create social change, to change history for the better. I'm so stoked today. I just want to rip off the Band-Aid and get right into this conversation. Look at her big smile. Amazing. Big smile. Amazing hair, right? If y'all have not met her, she is an experience. She's not just a person, she's an experience. She's got this point of view that's witty and sharp, but also at the same time, hey, it's super deep as well. And I'm proud to call you my buddy. Are you my friend? Are you my friend?
Absolutely.
Right
Yes.
on. A Paz, what are you doing on my show? What are you doing here?
If I had a dollar for every time somebody asked me that.
What are you doing on my show?
What are you doing here? How'd you get here?
What are you doing here, Paz? What are you doing?
Well, I mean, not to be like a Debbie Downer, but you asked me to come on your show.
Shit, that's right. I forgot.
Yeah.
No, of course. Well, it's
Yeah.
it's awesome to have you here. I can't wait for you to share your point of view, the way that you see the world. But can we go to your backstory, America? You grew up in
Backstory,
LA.
okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you grew up in LA. Your
Mhm.
mom is a genius, and your dad is something else, right?
Huh.
He's just something else. What was it like to grow up in LA, right? Are both of your parents Chicano?
Well, I don't refer to them as that. And I don't know if they qualify because I don't know the actual definition of Chicano.
Did I just start the podcast off with an ignorant term?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, it may very well be. I don't know because you never know these days. I mean, things move so fast, right? But I'll just back it up and I'll just, I'll fill you in. So, was not born in this country, was born in a different country. Of course, I was raised here since I was itty bitty. I was raised in LA. And yeah, my mom is phenomenal. And
Okay.
my mom is mom, right? And then,
Okay.
I didn't grow up with my dad. Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah. Well, not, living with him, And yeah, I mean, I could pivot into so many different directions. That alone, I could write volumes on just growing up, But,
Yeah, well, let's talk about it.
well, I'm going to let you lead.
My God. She's letting me lead. My goodness, this has never happened in the amount of time that I've known you, homie. So, for me, my origin story, and I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but my origin story is one where both of my parents immigrated to the United States, right? And when they did in the 70s, my mom came from a place where there was no phone. It was like a part of where she grew up, that we have just this one phone in town. And so I grew up in a place where my parents were proud to be Filipinos, but they're also proud to be Americans. And so that sort of, I guess I learned about the Philippines through the story that my mom would tell to me at the end of the day when I was going to sleep. I was so proud to come from the Philippines, right? I was so proud. But what I realized very quickly is not only was I Filipino, but I was also American as well. So like there's that, I remember I would talk to my cousins would come over. They're straight up from the Philippines, and it was very much treating me like I was American. And I understand why now, but that was something that growing up was very interesting. When I talk about your background, I talk about where you were born and how you grew up. Like, did you grow up like that, America? Like where you were both Mexican and American, or were you just Mexican? Like, how did you see your identity growing up?
Well, a couple things about that. So I grew up. I grew up here in the States. I consider myself that I grew up. So I was born in Mexico, and then from what I'm told and from what my memory, it's spotty, but I can remember. I think it was when I do the math. I think for the first 3 years I was in Mexico, right?
Okay.
And then as I was becoming coming of age to go to school, it was always the plan, from what I understand. This is from what I put together, that as we, because there were three of us, and as we were coming of age and we were ready to go to kindergarten, we would come and then live in the States with my grandparents, right? So I was the
Okay.
last one. Yeah, so we were in tier in every year, the older sister would come, and then the next year. But when you're the baby, you don't understand that. You just know that your sisters are disappearing.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden you're like, I remember, or maybe I'm making it up, I don't know, but I think I remember going through this grieving process of being in like a community of three, and kind of like, like cats kind of jump on top of one another because we were only 1 year apart. And then all of a sudden one cat disappears, and then another one disappears. And then there's only one kitten in the litter, right? Like there's only one kitten left, and it's me. And then, so I remember grieving that, and not really comprehending why siblings are being plucked out of the ecosystem of the. And then I remember that, just being really sad about that. And then I remember when they would come and visit, they seemed like intruders. Like I became an only child, and I started. And now I can see this, I can remember it, where I remember they would come and they would touch my toys, and I was really weird about that. Like, don't touch. Where before we were all like kind of on top of one another, and then I had separated. And then I came to the United States, and I remember being alone in the house, and the house wouldn't come to life until 2:00, which is around when my sisters would come home. And it was in between when they would leave and when they would come. It was really sad inside the house. It was really lonely. Again, I went through another year of that. Now, I didn't have words back then, obviously, but I do remember feelings, and I could still like tap into that feeling of just that aloneness and like coming alive at 2:00.
Well, you and I are in a self-development leadership program right now, and I think something that we talk about in that is when we're thinking about tracing things all the way back, right? We'll have these experiences that are oftentimes like it shows up, So for me, like it's when I was that age, I remember I thought on kindergarten that my mom was dropping me off to the school and she was leaving forever, right? And so that's turned into something where the terror that was, my brain doesn't know the difference between being the age I am right now and being a kindergartner, and it will show up, in relationships, in work, like this feeling of this is amazing. And at some point I'm going to get abandoned again. Right. And so is that something that you've seen show up for you, that feeling of sadness or that feeling of grieving that you're talking about?
Well, I think that feeling of that, just that kind of like that loneliness and that kind of empty feeling. And I've always, like, ever since I was a little kid, I've always been highly aware of it. And so I knew, like, highly aware of it. And so I didn't always have words for it, didn't always have distinction for it, but always very aware of that feeling when it descends on me. And then at some point when I was like, I don't know, maybe I want to say, I mean, I may be lying, but maybe in my no, because I don't know when it started and when it didn't. When I started kind of really like giving it words and kind of teasing it apart. And I remember walking through some Zen garden, and I thought this could be loneliness and emptiness and just really depressive for some people. And for other people, this is peaceful and zen and just really nurturing. And it just depends on where you're coming from. And come to find out that neurochemistry really influences the filter of which something is hell or heaven. And it could be the same exact thing.
Yeah. Is there a memory that you can remember where something was hell and then in retrospect you were like, oh no, that was actually heaven? Or the other way around?
This morning.
Okay. Nice. Knowing you were coming on a podcast was hell.
No. I was just around a group of women, and I didn't know who was going to be there. I was invited. I was on the phone, in communication with you about that. But I didn't know who was going to be there. Now, I knew that I knew at least one person really well, and then there's 2 or 3 people that were going to attend that I kind of sort of am related, but not really, and then a bunch of strangers. And for me, that causes social anxiety. Now, when you meet me, you wouldn't know that.
Nope.
Because
I
don't do it intentional, but I come across as very friendly, very open, and just very willing and blah blah blah. Even bordering on life of the party.
Yep, I see you more like that.
Yeah, or I could be very much like like a flower on the wall and just very quiet and kind of to myself. I can do both, right? And I can do it on command. When I choose it, I can choose into it, come in and out of it, but I have to be intentional with it. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just whatever muscle I want to experiment with. Do I want to sit back and let others fill the space and me just like be a battery, right? And just really support the container? Or do I want to go in there and get the energy moving in the room and, start the conga line, right? I can do that too. And anywhere in between, right? Yeah.
Totally get
that's
it.
Who I am. Yeah.
Totally get it.
And so, now mind you, it's taken years to be able to play with that, kind of like you do in a soundboard, a sound system where you play with
Mm-hmm.
the tweeter and the bass, right? Like that.
Yeah.
And then depending on what effect you want, you know, if a master knows what they're doing, not that I'm a master, but I'm saying if a master knows what they're doing with the keyboard.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
Ladies and
I won't
gentlemen,
belabor that.
the America PAX experience, like I was talking
Yeah.
about.
No,
right?
I'm big on metaphors. I'm big on
Yeah,
metaphors.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I can
yeah.
see that. But you were talking about heaven and hell. And today, how that
Heaven-
showed up.
Yeah, and so, you know, just going into an environment where there's new people and a lot of them, not a lot, but like 12 of them, you know, that's always kind of a little nerve-wracking for me because, you know, it's I'm not concerned that I'm going to be bored, because if I'm bored, I'll just leave. You know what I mean?
Nice.
But,
Okay.
Yeah, or not, or I'll find some way to entertain myself in my head and work some muscle, you know, like, okay, you know, everybody has a whole world inside of them. If I just lean into them and talk to them, you know, nobody's ever boring, you know?
Got it.
So there's that.
Got it.
But for me, it's, can I play nice in the sandbox with others? Can I create room and space for others and not dominate the space because my social anxiety is kicked up, and or that that I'm trying to peacock in the room, and do you know what I'm saying? I'm just kind of
I totally
like
know what you're
sucking up
saying.
the air. Yeah.
I totally know what you're saying. And I think now that I've known you a bit more, that I've seen you being both. You know, I've seen you really stand up for yourself and the group. I've seen you also like what the way that we started. You're just like, no, you take the lead, Cordon. And I'm like, yo, I have no problem taking the lead. But I had seen you always as this like mega alpha, right? So before even going, you got something to say. Look, the lips are
No.
pursed. Oh, okay.
I have known that about myself, that I can lead the charge, you know, like if humanity was coming to an end and there was only a group of us left, and I could totally lead the pack and have us find a new place to live, a new planet to live on, and populate that and make sure that
You're gonna
everything's
repopulate on Mars.
yeah, like I could totally take charge of that. That is who I am, right? And I can also be the woman behind the person. You know what I mean? That makes sure that you're going to win under my watch. You're going to win, Mark. Whatever you're up to in life, it's going to happen. We're going to have our ups and downs, and I'm right there with you. And you're the talent, and I'm totally like supporting you. I can be that person too.
And I bet you love all of that.
Yeah. Now, sometimes it's easier for me to hide and to be like the woman behind the scenes. That's easier for me because I don't have the pressure of the spotlight on me. You know what I mean? And
Like
I'm really
now.
good about. You're right. Well, no, I mean, we're really dancing in the conversation. You have the
We're
spotlight.
totally
I have the
dancing in the
spotlight. Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
Yep.
So nobody's dominating here. At least that's not the way it's occurring for me.
Nope.
I anyway, I lost my train of thought. But go on.
It's all good. I want to go and look at something that you declared as a preteen, and that was no marriage, no kids, people over traditions. And I'm like, this was like
I
little
created a
bitty.
lot of things, and I declared a lot of things. And I thought you were going to say my declaration, because I remember this vividly. I did declare that, by the way, when I was 11. I remember exactly where I was at and the words that I said, and I didn't know that when you make declarations at such a young age, and they're like, they get etched in your mind, and you think it's a passing thought, and they're not. They actually create your future, because your unconscious mind is really listening. And if you say with enough intensity, and I didn't realize that.
And frequency.
But there's a lot of things that I said. Yes, there's a lot of things that I said, and then I put a lid on it and locked it away and never visited again.
So like from preteen, when you went and made that declaration, into like your teenage years and your 20s.
At 11, I declared that I didn't want kids, that they didn't make sense. Okay, at
What do you
11,
mean they don't make sense? Our biology says that kids make sense.
No. Listen. When you make a declaration and you decide something and you don't know you're doing it, it's kind of like a shooting star. You think nothing of it, but that was significant. It registered in somewhere in your body. Somebody was hearing, something was listening, and they said, okay, note to self, kids don't make sense. You know what I mean? They're a no-win proposition. The tax deduction that you get for them doesn't offset the cost. It just doesn't make sense anyway you slice it.
11, you fucking said that?
Yeah, like they are just little leeches. You know what I mean? Financially, emotionally. Yeah. Like having a child is like having your heart on your sleeve. And you're walking around with the most valuable, precious thing of yours out in the world like that. And there's nothing you can do. I mean, you can, but if you do too much and you become this helicopter mom, it's just a no-win situation,
Why, you
like,
already knew you were
gives
going to
a
be a
manual.
helicopter mother? as an 11-year-old.
I didn't want to be a helicopter mother, excuse me. So I didn't want the burden of having to worry about something so near and dear and precious to me that it would break my heart if the wind blew in the wrong direction and it got hurt. So I just said, I don't want that. Like, my heart is too sensitive, too fragile for that. And I'm too aware of how being a human being and growing up can be very risky and painful and beautiful at the same time. But, like, I could handle it for myself, but I don't know that I can bear to see this thing that came from me experience the heartache of being a human being. So I said, and I thought, no big deal. It'll change somehow. There'll be magic dust that'll be sprinkled over my head and that'll change. It never changed.
Wow. Did you grow up Catholic? Did you come from a Catholic family? Christian family?
No, there was a lot of Catholicism in the backdrop, like all the guilt, but none of the religion or the repenting or the forgiveness. So it was just years of guilt, guilt. And
my
no
God,
way
that's
to let it
amazing.
out. Yeah.
Because I remember as a preteen in Catholic school, all I knew was that when a man and a woman love each other, and then the next thing was that, like, the next slide, you remember growing up and we had
Right,
those slide
magically,
projectors?
right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, literally there was a heart and a man and a woman, and in between them was a baby. And I was just like, that's cool. That's cool.
How
Yeah.
does God know to give them?
How
I used
does
to think
God
that,
know?
No, yeah. I used to think, again, it's magic, and it's this fairy dust. He knows when appropriately to sprinkle dust over a couple when it's ready, when it's time. Now, I used to think that you got pregnant from kissing, because that's what you would see in the telenovelas. They would kiss, and then the next thing is she has a belly. And I would go, oh, that's how you get pregnant.
So you watch telenovelas too. Amazing.
Well, I couldn't help it. It was in
You
my
got
house.
to, right? You got to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever?
Everything's so dramatic.
Oh, they're amazing. They're amazing. So,
Yeah.
you're talking about, you're preteen, a big freaking, like, declaration that no kids, no marriage, people over traditions, that feels a little bit contrarian, right? But have you in your life ever been like, why did I say that? Like, why did I say what I said?
Well, not that why did I say that, because I don't know for sure that that's the reason why I didn't, but I suspect that was, that kind of aligns with what happened, and I think I decided that, and then along the way I just collected more and more evidence to support that decision. You know what I mean?
Man.
And the old saying, careful what you ask for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're creating, not reporting, right?
Yeah.
Like
Completely.
we think we're reporting on life when we're actually creating it through our filters, right? Like
Completely.
I said, that Zen garden for somebody, it's like they just want to get a noose and hang themselves because it feels
Completely.
so empty and lonely, and the other
Right.
person feels totally like zenned out, right? Two different experiences, same garden, right?
Yeah, it's front of hand, back of hand.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's the same hand, but depending on how you look at it, it's
Where
heaven
you're
or hell.
focused.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting back to your question, what was it? I go like down these like rabbit holes.
I love this. I love this, Paz. I love going down these wormholes with you, brother or sister. I almost called you
Sister,
brother, right?
I'll be your brother.
Yeah, you're my sibling, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we're okay. So there's the declaration, right? That's where we were, right?
Mhm.
We're talking about the
Mhm.
declaration, and at any part of your life where you were like, shit, like this dude's awesome that I'm dating, but I'm gonna have to blow it up because this no marriage thing, and like this is more subconscious than it is conscious, right?
Well, yeah, okay, so I will say something that I've discovered along the way, that I think that a lot of people who married young or got with somebody young and had kids and started a family, which I'm totally for, by the way.
Mhm.
Now that I'm on, I'm more on this side than on that side, like rethink it. And it's kind of like those people that are atheists all their lives, and then right around the time they're going to die, all of a sudden they say God is either everything or nothing, and life is a miracle, and it does exist, and there is something beyond, all of a sudden they change their tune.
Completely.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but they say there's no atheists in foxholes, right? Because when
There's
push
no
comes to
atheists in
shove,
foxholes. Yeah,
yeah, all of a sudden, they're praying, right, to something,
completely.
Yeah. So maybe it's the desperation of coming face to face with one's mortality. I don't know, or I don't know what happens to people, but somehow they see the light at the towards the end.
Yeah, completely.
So for me, like I've had enough experience when I've been in a relationship and out of a relationship. I've had enough where I can see patterns. I think that that's the one advantage, because there are disadvantages as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one advantage of not having committed or, gotten involved. Yeah, in really, when I mean a commitment is have children, because that's the ultimate commitment to me.
Sure.
I mean, even a tattoo you can remove, but a child, you can't put the bullet back in the gun, right? I mean, you can give it up for adoption, but once you have it, you've now have this extension of you out in the world, right? This creation.
Completely.
Right?
Completely.
Now, whether you're responsible for it or not, whether you do right by it or not is a whole other story. But so I've had the chance to, like, when I quote unquote fall in love with someone, and that falling in love has changed variations throughout my life. I feel like when I was younger, it was more of a dopamine, kind of induced, like a love bombing kind of.
Nice, a love bomb thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then who doesn't love me, like a good love bombing, right? so as you get older, you kind of see that for what it is. Yeah, I mean, you still indulge in it, but you're a lot more aware of what it is. You know what I mean? You know that is going to change. That's not sustainable.
No, it's not. When you would get in this dopamine love bomb place, were you like,
binge?
I see us getting married. I see us having babies. Like, yikes, look at that smile, everybody.
The way that it would occur for me is like this. Like, I would look over to, the guy or whatever, and then I would say, God wants babies. God wants babies. I'm not falling for this one, because you feel inspired, you feel in love, you feel like, what would a creation between that person and myself, and they would be such a cute baby,
That's the best, when you think about the babies and what the babies look like.
And then I would think the drink through, there's an expression. I mean, I'm not in Alcoholics Anonymous, but in any day, I would love to, because I think that's great, right? But they say think the drink through. Like, when you're thinking that the drink is a good idea, like, think it through. Like, it's not just the first one, it's the second and the third, and they can't stop, and then it's like a demise, right? And you really think that drink through. You just think it through, and think the baby through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, right now you think it's cute to have a baby because you're gonna dress it and you're gonna this and you're gonna that, and then but like there's college tuition. There is like insurance at 16. When they're gonna start to drive, and how expensive that is.
Asses to wipe.
Thank you. There is sleepless nights and hospital runs because the fever, and the PTA meetings, and there's a whole world that goes with that. So immediately after I have that feeling, of like, oh, I'd like to have a baby, and then imagine followed by all of that stuff, and then I go, man, I know this is gonna pass.
What about the marriage thing?
Now I'm open for marriage. I'm open. I think I've been open since I was 30, but because I think anything below 30, I thought I was too young. Even at 30, I questioned it, but for some reason, because I think I've never wanted to have babies, or it's never been a priority. I thought about freezing eggs and all that, but I didn't do it. I had the money, and I just wasn't motivated. But I did think about marriage at 30, and I did take it serious, and I started making changes in my life. Like, I stopped working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, literally.
Yeah.
I used to do bail bonds, and I used to work around the clock. So I kind of moved away from that profession because it wasn't really conducive to dating. I wanted to start creating where I would actually build a relationship. Right. And I thought, okay, I found the dream man, because I did. And at the time, and we had the house, we had the cars, we had the parties, we had the social, the social circle. And I mean, he could have been mayor of the city, is how popular he was. Yeah. And we both were doing really, really well, really, really well. We weren't Rockefellers, but really well. Sure. And we both didn't have kids, and both working professionals. And so we had the dream life. Yeah. And I thought, okay, check. Could it be this easy? You know what I mean? And then my past started catching up to me, meaning emotionally and mentally, all of the stuff that I had been running from because I was in business and I never had time to think, come to find out all that dirty fuel was really from running myself. So, you can make a lot of money running from yourself, right?
You can.
And so, yeah. And so I think it was Kanye West in one of his songs, which I don't necessarily admire everything about him, but, he said, Cher and Kanye West have said two profound things. He said,
what's going on?
Ain't cheap is what he said. Pain ain't cheap. And when I thought about it, I go, he's right. A lot of the money that I have spent in life has been to soothe my pain. Also to get pleasure, but mainly to soothe my pain and run away from stuff, right?
Completely.
That was one, right? And I think Cher said something about, in that if we could bring back time, where she has that thong in the Navy ship or whatever. If
I could turn back time.
Yeah.
Was it that one?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. She said that we're all looking for or expecting the other person to have stuff that we don't even have. You know what I mean? She alluded to something like that. And those words have just reverberated in my head that they ring so true, you know?
Mm, mm. No,
So,
it's huge. That's
yeah.
a that I mean, I am thinking about her in that thong on a ship now. I probably have to restart this podcast because, like, oh my god, anyways. You talked about a pretty hardcore like AA thing about like thinking the drink all the way through, right? Is that
Hmm.
part of your past in any way, shape, or form? Like
So you're
either
gonna
you
call me
directly or
out?
your
You're gonna call me out? No,
okay,
no. But I'm highly aware that because of my background, that the statistics, or I don't want to say genetically because I don't buy into
yeah,
genetically. You know what I mean? I think
yeah,
that there's minimal, like there's it's minimal what you're genetically predisposed to,
mm-hmm,
and the rest of it is actions and belief system, right?
got it.
But on any given Sunday, like I'm not immune, you know.
No, I get
I
it. I
like to
get it.
I like to check out just as much as the next guy, right? And if I'm
Right.
not careful, there are those receptors that, every time you do it, they just get reinforced and reinforced. They get longer and longer, and they don't disappear. They
Mm-hmm.
pick up right where you left them. So you could like not indulge in something for 10, 15, 20 years. And then one time you do, you just pick up right where you're at. So I'm very careful, but I've always been very clear that I know if I develop any addiction, and if
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware of it, because sometimes we have addictions and we're not aware of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Everybody's
And sometimes,
everybody has multiple addictions. That's my take on things. But yeah.
right, well, where something has you, you don't have it. And a lot
Yep.
of times I think we can fool ourselves to thinking that we still have control, and we never really check in because there's a part of us that knows that if we do, we're going to go into full blown panic, that we've lost control somewhere along the way. Yeah, and so that's why I say if I ever develop an addiction, and I have in the past developed
Mm-hmm.
addictions that,
Yeah.
I took care of, right? Nail biting was one of them. There's a few other things like that,
Nail
right?
biting is
Yeah.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was younger. Yeah. And so I've always said if I become aware of an addiction,
Mm-hmm.
my tendency is to go after it and
Yeah.
handle it.
Got
Yeah.
it.
It's like playing whack-a-mole, because when you take care of one, it pops up somewhere else. But, I'm not going to give up because of that. I'm just going to just keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Well, the reason I actually bring it up, and if need be, that might need to be one of the safe words, right? Where I go back and clean up this edit about AA. But I truly feel very strongly that the way you and I know each other in terms of the program that we're currently working, it pulls from those models. And so, that's why I'm curious, is because
No,
if some
I've had my share of 12-step groups, not more than one, simply because it's not necessarily that I felt that I was out of control in that area, but
Mhm.
the different groups like take cuts at personal development from different angles. But I mean,
Yes.
there's also Brene Brown and Byron Katie and Eckhart Tolle, and
Hmm.
and then there's Werner Erhard, and then there's, I mean, you name it. And I'm up for anything that takes a cut from a different angle, a different point of view, to come at it from a different perspective. You know,
I completely agree with you. Like it all kind of falls under the same
yeah,
place that we're in. It just depends on what we call it, right?
yeah.
I want to get to this as well. You said you consciously decided to master people. And so
Because
was
you're
there
gonna say masturbate, I'm like avocado, avocado, avocado.
did I say that? Did I
No,
say
you didn't. But I
masturbate?
thought that's what you were going. I'm going. Oh, you're just pulling out all the stops.
I'm pulling out all the
Skip
stops.
it. Let's keep going. Let's keep
Avocado,
going. Skip
avocado,
it. Avocado,
avocado.
avocado.
So when you consciously decide, I'm quivering now. Like if you could see, my brown skin would be turning red underneath.
We're adults. Let's do
We're
this.
adults.
Keep plowing through it. Let's
This
just
is
keep going.
this is the 12 o'clock show, people. It's a
That's
12
right.
o'clock show.
That's
We're gonna
right. Cable. It's cable,
yes,
not TV.
this is the cable TV, right? So you said you consciously decided to master people, right? So was there a certain time in your life or moment or a story where that's something that you were consciously seeing, that like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna look at people's behaviors. I'm gonna look at like sort of looking at their nonverbals, all those things. Is How did this thing even start? Because it sounds
Well,
like people watching on like to the 10th degree.
Yes,
Because no one
yes.
says deciding to master people,
Well, yeah,
right?
yeah. So, okay, so a couple of things, okay?
Hmm.
Like, people have always baffled me, but I think it's because I've always baffled myself. You know what I mean? Like, always been a mystery to myself, but it was because of the way I grew up, you know? I grew up in a household, it wasn't intentional, and they were beautiful, and they are beautiful, but kids are to be seen and not heard,
Got
right?
it.
So nobody was going down on their knees and mirroring back to me, it sounds like you're really sad. You know what I mean? No, it was like, I'll give you something to cry about, kind of, you know. I mean, not to,
Yep.
they weren't necessarily like abusive or no more abusive than the neighbor, you know what I mean?
Completely.
But that was just kind of how we grew up, right? And it
Yep.
was normal, right? So there was nobody mirroring back to me, reflecting back to me,
Right.
empathizing, really getting side by side with me and giving me language for the things that I was experiencing and feeling, you know. So I didn't grow up with a strong
Mm.
sense of self. I grew up
Okay.
with an aggressive sense of self, you know, towards others, and you know, because of the neighborhood that I grew in, you know, like I wasn't necessarily like a fighter or an aggressive person, but I was, you know, in where I grew up, you definitely had to walk around with like, you know, kind of like non-victim stance. You know, that was just intuitive, you know,
Okay. What's a
like
non-victim stance?
like you
Like you
kind of
put.
had to walk around with this fu like, you know, like posture, you know, because
Okay.
you would get picked on or jumped on or preyed upon, you know what I mean? You know, and I was out late at night by myself when I shouldn't have been. And, you know, you have to kind of puff yourself up and, you know, talk a little tough. And, you know, I mean, but I could, you know, I probably couldn't back those things up, and I would probably get myself in a lot of trouble if I tried because I have to pick up something and hurt somebody, you know what I mean?
I need you to teach me how to do that. So I'm walking through my neighborhood late at night, right? So like myself out. Like I'm guessing I stick my chest out a little bit.
You know how those animals in the wild where like you know that dinosaur in Jurassic Park where he spreads out and goes and he's like you know and he
Totally,
spits
man.
that goop at
It
you.
spits
Yeah,
the
he's
goop
like
at everybody.
yeah, it's a teeny tiny little lizard like thing, right? But it needs to puff itself up and make itself appear more intimidating, and it does have a defense built in, but that's part of the defense, like to tell you to f off, you know what I mean? Like you've been
To
warned.
peacock a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah.
yeah, you've been warned, kind of like that, you know. So I mean, I was a girl, and you know, I was a cute girl, you know what I mean? But I would walk around, you know, like you know, a little more aggressive than I needed to be, you know, just because it was kind of like a, you know, like get away from me, you know.
Did you scrap, Paz? Like did you scrap? Did you scrap with people?
Only a few times. I was a really good talker, so I would try to tuck my way out of a
Yeah.
lot of fights. But every once in a while, you know, I just got myself into a corner where I just got my ass handed to me, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I wasn't like my sister was, and she was much bigger than I was. So because I was her sister, I would always name drop her name, and we would travel in similar circles. So I would kind of be left alone. But then she transferred to another county. She went to Riverside, like in my junior high year, and then it felt like open season on
Were you
Paz, you know.
fucked? Yeah, you were fucked.
Yeah, and I felt like it was a matter of 3 or 4 months before it's like in the prison yard and your
Yeah.
protector leaves and all of a sudden it's
Yeah.
open season on you. It was kind of like that. But
Got
I think
it.
I also had a
So
mouth.
I wouldn't be surprised if you had a mouth, right? So okay,
Fully
so talking about
self-expressed.
I love you're talking about AA, then you're talking about not being a prison bitch, right? So like this is the best episode.
Until I was.
This is right. So let me go to that part of the interview, right? So you grew up in the mean streets or in a
Well,
place
I
that
don't
was
think so because it was
okay.
just it was just where I grew up, and sometimes people go, oh, and I'm like, you know, it's not like it was Watts or anything, but you know, people have
Yeah.
the impression that that's what it was, and to some extent, I guess it kind of was. You know what I mean? It kind of was.
Sure.
I mean, there was gunfire, there was robberies and burglaries, and people getting jumped and you know assaulted. I mean, I wasn't around that I knew of, but
Okay.
but it was there. It was just like in the corner, like half a block away from me. It was happening. Like
Yeah.
all this stuff was happening around me. But for me, it was just another Tuesday. You know, it's just kind of like you're playing with dolls and we were. I will give that to my parents that we were very well looked after. Like we were not unattended that way physically. We were
Mhm.
always like we could have been royalty is how well we were like
Yeah.
physically taken care of.
Okay.
You know, where
Okay.
they have bodyguards on them 24/7. That's kind of how we were.
Sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, that creates its own issue.
Of course
You
it
know?
does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the being constantly watched. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of can create its own thing. You
Yeah.
know, when there's no independence, of allowing somebody to explore by themselves. I mean, given where we were living, I kind of understand.
Okay. D- uh, like, is that a neighborhood that you're close? Because you're still in LA, right?
Yeah, I
Is it
visited frequently.
okay?
Frequently, yeah.
Cool, cool. So tell me about
Yeah.
this whole thing about studying people and where it came from, because you've been talking about you showing up like as something to be studied or something that you're in mastery of, like being
Mm-hmm.
able to
Mm-hmm.
sort of show people your energy, to peacock, to show that you're an alpha, right? Or when you want to be a beta, or like those sorts of things. But
Only when it
take me
needs to,
through
though. It's not. I
only
don't
when you
lead
need
with
to.
that, but yeah, yeah,
Completely, completely. So, like,
yeah.
talk me through this whole idea of mastering people. It's like, for example, are you like studying and mastering me the way that I'm showing up? Like,
I do it intuitively. I don't do it consciously, but when I was younger at 16 I did it. I would move levers like the Wizard of Oz moves levers behind the curtain. I was that intentional about it. But for me it was because I was studying something and learning something and I was like exercising it to build the muscle. But this is stuff that we naturally do anyway, and I've always been highly highly sensitive and intuitive just naturally because of my background and my
yeah.
predisposition of how I arrived on earth.
Hmm.
So all of that has been, but I took it and I put it on steroids. Like I made it my mission.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, like if I knew that I wanted to be intentional with you to create rapport for whatever reason, you know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
Then I would start mirroring, matching head positions, breathing, shoulder stance, rhythm of words, things like that. So NLP basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
noticed this. You snapping at me. I was like, yo, she's using like hypnotic NLP techniques on me, like right on my
Anchoring.
my own
She's
fucking
anchoring
show.
me.
I was gonna ask
State
at some
change.
point, like, exactly. Sleep. Yeah. I
Chicken.
I right? Right? And like, so in your work in our program, I know that one of the things you did was like having a closed set with where you were speaking to folks, in our game in the world, right? I know that you were
Mm-hmm.
doing that, your job, to navigating every single day. Like, how is this, like, teach me a little bit about what you do to master people. Like, okay,
Well,
the head tilt,
okay.
I look at the hell
We'll,
tits.
we'll, we'll get there. We'll get there. Because you can totally pick up a book on NLP, like basic NLP, and that's just one modality. There's
Hmm.
many modalities, right? That's just the
Yeah.
basic one. Okay, so when I was 14, I picked up my first self-help book, and it was Dianetics, the Church
No.
of Scientology. Yeah, but it was so dense that I had to put it down, right? Because I couldn't get through the first page because I had to keep looking up words. They were so, and back then we didn't have like computers, right? Everything was manual. And so then the next step that I remember was at 19, I was fully into Tony Robbins. Man, I used to listen to him morning, noon, and night. I had some bootleg
Yep.
cassettes of his, and I mean, I was just all over that like white on rice, right?
Yep.
And I mean, he was powerful and he
Yeah.
influenced me and shaped me.
Yeah.
And then Louise Hayes and other things started coming into play just because of some relatives that were in 12-step groups, and that the personal development work started
Yep.
seeping in. But I've just been constantly working at that. But I remember when I was 16, I was standing at my school and I looked out in the yard. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, I said, I could go the route of getting a PhD and getting a cush job, like at some university or something, and just earning 100 and something thousand guaranteed for life. And then I die. And then it's all over, right? I retire and then I die, right? And then that didn't sound very exciting to me. So then I thought, okay, so what's the other thing I can marry into it? And I thought, well, that's kind of a gamble, you know what I mean? And as soon as my
Yeah.
boobs and my butt start hitting my knees, what's going to happen to me, right? So then I thought, okay, don't want to go that route. I mean, it's a good backup plan, but that's not what I want to depend on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I said, sales. Sales is the name of the game. There's no ceiling on that income. You get to create your own. So I've always been 1099 and I've always been in sales, and even
Yeah.
when I'm not in sales and it's something else, I always create a sales component to it because that's what motivates me. Otherwise, I'm just kind of coasting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no dangling carrot for me if there's no percentage or commission or some kind of like grasping. That's something, right? And so what is sales? Sales is a conversation. I mean, there's
It
many
is.
different types of sales, but sales is a conversation. And ethical sales is what I'm talking about. It's a conversation, and people buy from people they like, right?
Totally.
Or because I've done this too, where I've been a complete asshole and I have a product that people need, and I'm one of 5 people in the United States that has it, And my product is faster, cheaper, better for the consumer. So I get to set the criteria and I don't have to be nice about it. You know what I mean? I just have to be very matter of fact about it, very transactional, and I can get away with that, right?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so I just concluded that sales was the name of the game, and the key to sales is people. And if you can get inside someone's head and figure out what they need, what they want, what they value, then that is conducive to sales. Now, that's how I started. This was at 16. Where I am today.
Wow.
Yeah,
at 16.
Where I am today, yes. Where I am today, it's not about sales anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about even enrolling people in my agenda, although I have that ability, right? And they can say yes or no, right? But I can be very enrolling and very enthusiastic and very, very rah-rah or whatever. But now really it's about getting over there with people, getting them, getting what their world is like, right? And then finding a way to, in harmony, be with them. And hopefully we can both elevate one another, right? And then there may be other things in the background, like maybe sales or some project or something else that we're up to. But that's really where I come from and where I play when I'm connecting with people, whether they know it or not. But that's always in the forefront for me. It's like, how can I connect with this person? And if I can't connect, what is it that they're mirroring back to me inside of me that I can't be with? That is, I'm being reactivated by them. So there's always something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love how you talked about sales as a conversation, and maybe when you were 16 years old, sort of seeing the transactional,
I was all about taking their heads
right?
off and I want money. Yeah.
Completely.
It was immature and it worked at the time, I guess.
I mean, when you're 16 years old, like you're not meant to be fully mature, right? And then
some 16-year-olds are though. They're born that way now,
They are born that way. Many are.
This is the one thing that I'm like, I sometimes like resentfully say, listen, it took me all these decades to get here, and some kids are just like, how they're just born with all this wisdom, nowadays, So
you resent those preteens again.
I have spent a lot of time and money,
right?
So yeah.
No, I feel you too. I'm like, oh my gosh.
They're
How do
born
these
this
folks
way.
at 15 or 14 know how to do stuff that I have no clue on doing?
They're old souls, yeah.
They're total old souls. Well, I want to ask you this. I want to get through this one more thing that came up.
I know, it's like
right? Yeah, we're there's like a million ways that we can go here, right? Yeah. This is the dancing in the conversation, right? So it's, from what I'm seeing now, when you're talking about this and then elevate, like connecting with the person and then elevating together. It's not Aristotle. Okay,
Socrates?
so I think it's Aristotle who talks about the idea of virtuous friends, right? Or virtuous relationships, those sorts of things, right? And on the bottom, it is straight up like there are friendships of just utility, like the person who sat next to me in bio class, I would go and take her to lunch after class because I couldn't wake up at 8:00, and she would give me notes, right? And then like the next level is like, you want to just kind of have fun with people, right? That's like the hedonic, right? But then the very top is your highest happiness state only can happen if you see the other person being just as happy. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
And that's what I feel you're talking about here, right? Like you're locking in and then going up. And I think it's to be commended. Because I still think a lot of people, our age, and many people still are in a utility part of life.
In what you said, yes, that would be assumption. Yes. However, there's something more there, and it's how you described. And thank you. I've never put it together that way, but we said there's some friends that are for a specific reason, and there are friends for fun, and then there are friends to elevate, whatever.
Completely.
And one would think that what's implied in that is that one is better than the other. You know what I mean?
Yes, and that's
I know
one of the
you
biggest...
know better. I know you know that. I know you know that because I know who you are. But I just wanted to articulate it that what I'm getting is that sometimes, even though this is where I like to play and dance up here, you know what I mean? I say up here because you made that gesture. But there are times where I know that the muscle that I need to work on is just to be light and fluffy like ice cream and be right here, dance right here in this middle part, that is appropriate. And that is something that I have not mastered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
that
we're full on dancing, right? And actually, since we're dancing, it's like, I know that you go and dance borracha. What is it called?
Bachata.
Bachata. Like that in and of itself is hedonic in nature, right? You
It
don't
is.
necessarily go in being like, yo, I'm going to be virtuous friends with everybody here on a Saturday night, right?
But even that hedonism, that hedonic, as you say, it's not that way for me. See, this is what I mean by that is a blind spot for me to some extent, because what I
Okay.
do with it is I go there to meet my need of being in community, of being around others, but not really being like super deep with them, right? But I can be next to another human being and we switch off partners every like 2 minutes. So I get
Hmm.
to be with a lot of different people and I don't really have to interact with them. I just get to be in
Yeah.
their presence. And what we're focused on is we're focused, and I decided that with my dancing, it's not like I'm going to go dancing with the stars, kind of material. I'm not that. But for me, it's like some people go to yoga. I go to learn how to dance because my mind is not here in the head. It is focused on the instructor, focused on the styling of the hands, focused on the feet, focused on the music, focused on everything but me. And it
Yes.
gives me 3 hours of not being in here and being
Yes.
out there. And then I also get to be with people's humanity.
Hmm.
Like the guys are very, like sensitive because they're the leaders and people like you could see that all their I think you could see some insecurities about being around other people, and what
Yeah.
they're making it mean about themselves and all that. I get to be with all that and look at it and some of it I get to judge, some of it I get to be empathetic and compassionate with, including myself.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more that I get out of it than hedonism.
Well, hedonism has a negative tone to it now. But when it was used by Aristotle, it was just around the lines of, I just want to enjoy the taste of a grape. I just want to be present. And that's what I'm hearing that you're talking about, right? And also at the same time, like I completely relate to you. I don't necessarily, I mean, swing dancing was as close as I got to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was a point in my life where things were hard, work, being in school, all those things. And I joined a men's roller derby team. You're talking to Manila Ice right now. But I did that to get, like you're talking about, I needed to get out of my own head, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so, like, it almost was like hedonism, that idea of just getting out of my own head was basically on a spiritual level for me. Cause, like, it was my church. It was
Mm-hmm.
the place that I would leave the happiest, even though I wasn't going through a happy time outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not trying to imply that you're going through an unhappy time, but
No,
I
no,
com
no. I have
yeah,
been there though. I have been
yeah,
there where, walking in hot yoga, because hot yoga, like you can't think about anything else but the relentless heat. And even a simple position becomes so hard with all this, like, whatever 90 or 110 degree or whatever heat that you can't think of anything but the heat.
exactly.
And so, as annoying as that is, it keeps you from going inside your body and it gives you just a reprieve long enough to. And then when it's all over, the gratitude that you experience for it being over, because it's just this
Yes.
constant workout, you know what I mean? Of
Yeah,
not being able to be with yourself and being pulled out here.
got it. I got it. Yeah. Do you think that you're or are you an empath from the standpoint
I've
of
looked,
can you tap into people's emotions or
I've
sometimes be
looked up the
connected?
word.
Hmm.
I've looked up the word, and
Hmm.
there's super empaths and all this other stuff. And then some people say really it's codependency and all kinds of stuff. But let's
What?
let's leave.
Okay.
There's all kinds of, you can look at it inverted or whatever. I've just looked at the word from different places, and I would say that I am. I would
Hmm.
say that I am bordering on almost bordering, but not, and it's a trap. Bordering on almost mind reading.
Yes. Why? Wait. Why is that a trap? What do you mean that's a trap?
Because sometimes I have my history and my wounding, and sometimes that's the filter that I'm looking at, not the person. And so when I think that I'm really reading you, it's really that there's some smudge on my filter that I don't know it's a smudge. You know what I mean? And so I think that it's coming from the outside when really it's coming from inside. So sometimes it gets collapsed with what I'm seeing and it has like a different flavor to it.
Okay.
That's what
No,
happens.
I can see that. Also, within the program that we're in, I see you as a person that easily picks up on other people's emotions. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
you could come in here, you could easily scan me in half a second and be like, "What's bothering you today, Mark?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "You don't know me." And you being like, "Oh, yeah, you're upset. Something's in your upset."
Yeah, well, I think one of my superpowers that I didn't know, and I mean, there's no evidence for this in like hard facts, like scientific, but,
Yeah.
like I haven't plugged little sensors in me and brain scans and all that, but I think one of my superpowers is I called it, and I discovered it when I was in the bail bonds business because I had to do a lot of underwriting, and I had to do underwriting like
Mm.
fast, really, really fast,
There you
and
are,
make like
hypnotizing everybody.
what? Well, I had to make like millions and millions of dollars worth of choices and decisions fast, really
Yeah,
fast. So at the
got you.
speed of light, really. So basically, what I think that my whole life has trained me to be was the human lie detector. So I got really, really good at, even though I was so out of touch with myself, but it was such a like strong knowing, like I just know
Mm.
things, and one would say, oh, it's magic, or oh, it's ESP or intuition or whatever. It's science. It's
Okay.
science. Yeah, it's
Okay.
science. And I know it's science. It just happens so fast.
Hmm.
It's like walking. I don't think about walking anymore. It's like speaking. I don't think about speaking anymore. But it's
Yeah.
science. There's
Yeah.
developmental stages, and you cultivated that muscle, or I've cultivated that muscle. And I'm not the only one, but I'm saying that's one of my superpowers.
I like the way that you talk about that because a lot of people will come in saying, "Oh, I was a born empath and you guys can't be one either." But like everything in this conversation would lead to you being able to read people very quickly, right? People in your neighborhood, people who you're creating sales with, virtuous relationships and friendships, right? All of that has to do with the power of really digging in and seeing another person with not six senses, like not just the five senses, but there's something there. We don't know exactly what it is, but it's science, or other people would call it magic, but that has been something that you've been crafting, and so when you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so a layer, just to kind of throw a little bit more, to ground this a little bit more. No, I say for people who might not know, like, what are you talking about, right? Like, I get it, I hear you, but I don't know what that means. What does that look like here in the real world, right? So part of that is when I'm taking in someone,
Mhm.
I'm not only seeing what I'm seeing here and picking up on all the micro movements and the
Yeah.
tone and the breathing and the posture, all of it, right? And there's a
Mhm.
part of me that's doing it. It's not even me. I'm not even required. It's just somewhere in there, right? It's like when you're driving, you can like drive with your knee, put on lipstick, and talk on the phone, and like make
Exactly.
sure that the baby is strapped in the back, right?
Exactly
Like that,
right.
right?
But you
And
can't
so
do it. You can't come to our meetings if you're on the.
no, you can't. You can't do it. Yeah. So what winds up happening is my brain is so trained to look at your point of view, look at my point of view, look at
Yeah.
how we're looking at this point of view, look at it from here, look at it from this lens, look at it from this lens. Like quickly, like at the speed of light, I can take all this in and I can hold all these dualities. And then
Hmm.
like I get how I feel. I get the impact that you're having on me. I get the reaction that I'm having to you. And then I also get to see where that's coming from within me and the different things that I can do with it. And then I get to be with you. And then I get to be with where that came from, how it's
Yeah.
impacting, how you're reacting to it, and then how you're trying to manage it, and all these different, and then together, right? I don't think that most people think that we're able to do it. Not that they can't. It's just not a natural thing that occurs for them.
You're talking about this thing that Bruce Schneider talked about, Dr. Bruce Schneider, and it's holographic thinking, right? And it's you
Okay.
being able to analyze something from multiple angles, but it's the same thing. Like what you're doing, bottom up, top down, spin it around, right? So he talks about things like, the brain cognitively, the heart, intuition, the gut, right? And all of those together become holographic. And the more you use those things, the more you use the five senses and then the sixth one or seventh one, right? The easier it is to make a more objective decision, right? Versus, yep, okay, here we go.
It's hard to get attached to something when you think that way. That's the good news. The bad news is it's hard to get attached to something when you think that way. Do you know what I mean?
Completely know what you mean. Completely know what you mean. So, do you consider it a blessing and a curse at the same time to be able to do that?
Only if it has me. If I'm not conscious of it, it can kind of get a little wonky and a little weird. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Where
Yeah.
it starts creating like unworkability in my life. But when I'm
Completely.
conscious of it, and then I can be intentional and go, okay, yes, I'm perceiving Mark this way, and all of these considerations are coming up, and I can go back to my values, my needs, my wants, and what I created, and I can come from there. I can still choose, but I have to really do the full circle and then come back to me
Yeah.
and then look through those lenses. I got to hang on to something, otherwise
You
I stand
do.
for nothing, right?
Exactly. Totally. And the fact that you can do that in like a microsecond It's awesome. And that goes to show that it's a muscle that, whether you think you're born with it or not, it's a muscle that you've been flexing for a long part of your life. And sometimes it's a blessing and sometimes it's a curse, right?
Yeah,
So
well, I think it was a predisposition and also how I grew up, but I think that at some point very young in my teens, I discovered it and I capitalized on it and then I maximized on it.
yeah, talk about that. Talk about
Hmm.
that.
Well, no, just it was exactly
Discovering, this is
everything we've
really
been
cool.
talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exact. Yeah, so I remember I was reading a book when I was very very young. I was reading a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and a friend of mine
Covey.
walked
No, that's
by.
not Covey.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't know if it's Tracy or one of those guys, and she walked by and because I was like kind of tanning, which I don't do anymore, but I was tanning and I had it on my chest, and she goes, "Oh right, way to go, playing your play." You know, she said, "What did she say?" She goes, "Maximizing your strengths" or something, and I thought, "Oh, she thinks that I'm good with people." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so for me, like you could drop me in the middle of Bosnia, and I could
Hmm.
create connections from there.
Fantastic.
Just
Yeah.
create, you know what I mean? Just because it's who I am.
Yeah.
Now, there's all kinds of craziness that goes on in my head about it, and that's what I'm currently working on to quiet all that down. But I
Hmm.
can do it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to take this to the next level. You practice what you call the art of questioning, right? You talk about you being a champion at questioning, abstractness, communication through metaphor. You already have said like how you communicate through metaphor. I've seen it the whole time, which is part of the reason why I'm like laughing every other minute with you. But like, I want you to talk about that. And do you have like go-to questions or methods that you use with your, as in your career, being a leader, when in your dating life? Like, do you have these sorts of, like, how do you use your art of questioning in those different domains? Hey, are you picking up what I'm throwing down here? Are you digging the Joy Revolution podcast? If so, I invite you to subscribe on this platform. Now, if you want more, I have an online community called The Underground. It's free to sign up. In there, you'll find mini courses inspired by podcasts like this one. You get to connect with other community members. I'm in there. The link's in the description. Let's get back to the episode.
Well, each domain is different because
They are.
yeah, each domain is different because they require in some domains I have more dexterity than in others, right?
Yeah.
Like I can dance more in others than in some, and some I'm trying new to go to the next level in others, so I have to slow it down and be really intentional. And by that I mean like write it out, think through it, and then practice.
Yeah.
So let's be more specific with your question, and I'll let you lead.
Yeah. I think, I mean, just the idea of using the art of questioning, because you're incredible in terms of the way that you can navigate through understanding people, sort of, having a microsecond to pick up on where they're coming from, but also you add to that this art of questioning, and that's speculating or being curious in something in the world, or throwing questions out there where you're going to get feedback that's more than just like 1 through 10 quantitative analysis things. You're really digging deep into things, right? So straight up, you talk about how you're abstract with those things, or you talk about how you use things like metaphor in trying to pull the best out of people. And so,
Well, I find that, and this is a space where I need to be like, I don't want to say careful, but that's the word I want to use, is careful, because
are we going to safe
again,
word right now? Are we doing safe
no,
word? Okay.
not that kind of careful. The kind of careful with how I use this when interacting with people. So I can go real deep, real fast. And I'm not talking about necessarily trauma bonding or anything like that, but I'm just talking about, like, for me, because my level of like openness can be like, I'm comfortable with people, unless I don't feel safe, then, and then at that point I have to question, like, what is it that they're reflecting back to me about me that has me reacting, right, and closing down. And
Completely.
some of it is can be legit. Like sometimes people have, they're in a little bit of a dark space, or they have personality disorders, and I said, there's some part of me that senses that, and I don't want to interact with it, maybe because I don't have the bandwidth for it, or because I just don't want to deal with it. But that's rare for me. That's rare.
Okay.
I mean, I could sit next to Saddam Hussein or Satan and cancel that, and you know what I mean, and be curious, but to be careful with that, because sometimes characters can be dangerous.
Completely. I mean,
Yeah.
I do agree. I think that I don't remember what it was. I had to call you for something, and like we went from like superficial to like you talking about ham sandwiches to like getting crazy deep, And I think that's, I think it's incredible to like not have to go through those like, I don't know,
Norms, social norms. Yeah.
yeah, those social norms, right? And that's what I
Yeah.
appreciate about you. Yeah.
As you're creating that, I'm going to say that not just with you, but with anybody who, first of all, there has to be permission from the other person to be able to do that. Because a lot of people do require that courting.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? To like kind of to touch to see if you're safe, to touch to see if you're safe. And that takes time. And, there's some of that. No, and you know what? That's useful. That's necessary. Their nervous system requires that. And my nervous system can go with that. I can do that. But if there's rapport and there's relatedness already built, and there is because, we have certain things in common in the backdrop of personal development and who we know ourselves to be in the training we have is amazing.
Yeah.
So I know that you're a big person and I'm a big person. And yeah, we can get petty and be human and all that. But I also know that
we've gotten petty? I thought you were the only
yet.
one that didn't get petty with me this quarter.
No. So
notice you're looking down as you say no.
No,
Just
because
that out there.
No, because I was trying to think, have I gotten on it with him? Or has he gotten on it? And not that I know of,
No, not
but,
at all.
Yeah, so like I know that if I start speaking to you and I represent you to who you are or who I create that you are, you're gonna immediately
Exactly.
go there.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're
Yep.
gonna because I know Mark knows, right? There's Mark and then there's Mark, right?
Yeah.
So I have that sense of relatedness with you. So I can go deep fast. And if I trigger you, I know that you and I have the tools to like back it up, clean that up, look at that, own our part, you take responsibility for your part, and then we can start from nothing again.
Exactly.
Like, we
to
have
restore that is
training.
incredible. Totally.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, I can do that with most people, but every once in a while you walk around and people have these little landmines inside of them, these tripwires that you just didn't know were there, that nobody could have known they're there, that not even they knew that it was there. And
Exactly.
You trip that wire, they go off on you, and then, so in the past, I make it mean something about me. Too much, not enough, oh my God, da-da-da, and then I bring in all my unresolved stuff of more evidence of, right, of all the stuff that I, yeah.
Totally.
Right. Rather than going, okay, I just hit a little landmine with them. Like I had no way of knowing. And my way of being is to go out on the skinny branches and risk and be the one to say hello first, be the one to introduce myself, be the one to invite you when you're a stranger into the group and go, come on, like it'll be fine, it'll be fun, like that. And sometimes somebody can be like, whoa, what's, back off, and rejection hurts,
Yeah.
I'm human, right? So now I can go, okay, too much, too fast. Their nervous system is just not, it needs a little bit more, courting or whatever.
Turn
So I
the
have to slow it
volume down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Versus somebody else is like, oh, God, this is kind of delightful, or okay, I wasn't expecting this, but come on in, and then they can just match my energy. I would say 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, it goes well, but 2 out of 10, and depending on how much unresolved stuff or wounding they have, they can really take my head off, and I have to do a lot of like work internally to like quickly work with that real quick and get back to center. And sometimes some people can't be reached.
Yeah, I get that. And I actually think that, well, it's not, I actually think that is the art of questioning that you're talking about right there. The art of, going in it, right? Getting to know another person, sometimes bypassing the little piddly beginnings of a conversation, just getting to these next levels. And then some people are not feeling it, And so that's why
there is a price though for that sometimes.
What's
a
the
lot
price?
Of times there's a price. Those social norms that I was talking about.
Yeah.
A little bit here, and then you give a little bit here, and now we have a little bit of bigger container, and then a little bit more, and time goes by, and people's nervous system, you have time to digest what just happened. How do I feel about it? Did this feel like a positive experience, or do I want to less of that or whatever? And for some people it takes time to feel into their body, and it's not even conscious.
It does,
right? It just,
yes.
Yeah, right. And it takes time, and then you can see you can't see consistency right away. That takes time. So there's certain things you can't rush. And sometimes in the way of being of just going in really fast, that gets compromised, and so then it shows up later, and there's no way that I could have known that moving at the speed of light that I did It would have taken time. And so I know that that's a risk. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I will experiment with that and slow it down.
You experiment
If
with
I
us.
feel like the person is somebody that,
Yeah.
oh, this looks like, they're saying they're going to meet me there at 5 and I'm going to rent the car and I'm going to flip the bill, and then they don't show up. Like, over time you get to know someone, like, are they their word?
Yeah.
And if not, are
Yeah.
they in communication about it? Are they going to take responsibility? Do they have character? Or is it somebody that can self-reflect? Is it somebody that can empathize? And like, how is this going to impact me? You know what I mean? Like that. That takes time.
It does take time with a lot of folks, right? But it's also cool that at any point you're willing to like go all in and just like jump out of the plane right from jump, and enjoy that.
Well, what I'll do is I'll take calculated risks. And then when I see what's on the line, then I can say, can I sustain that loss? Can I sustain that blow, whether it's to my ego or to my wallet or whatever? I will look at what's at stake as best as I can and say, am I willing? And then I go in with open eyes. So if I was depending you for something and you didn't pull through, do I have a contingency plan? And can I live with that plan? So that's always part of it. It's
You
not
always
just
roll
willy-nilly.
with plan Bs and stuff like that? I got it.
I'd like to like a somewhat of a safety net. I mean, there might still be a blow where I feel the blow onto the ground, but there's a little bit of cushion there,
No, I totally get that. These are the best nonverbals I think I've ever seen on the show. So I'm just enjoying every single one. You talked about your ego. Do you consider yourself an egotistical person?
Oh yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that most of us are. Very few of us are not. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you believe that many of us we all start off as assholes?
Well, I didn't say that.
Okay.
And yes, we all have that capacity, thank God, because sometimes that asshole is very funny or it gets shit done. Or, there's a lot of good stuff out of that asshole. Like for me, like asshole, kind of like an asshole energy, especially when I like put it on steroids, it's actually very funny. But it's intended to be funny. It's not at the expense. Yeah, it's not necessarily at the expense of others, and sometimes it can scratch the corners of that, you know what I mean, for others. Like if I make a joke and, for example, we were at this gathering, right, earlier today, and they had mimosas, and I said, like, for example, drinking in the morning, like, I didn't say this, but, like, mimosas is a socially acceptable way of drinking in the morning.
Completely.
And if you have some issues with, if you're self-conscious about your drinking, you know what I mean? Even though it wasn't intended that way, it can kind of graze an edge and then cause a little kerfuffle, you know what I mean?
It could start a kerfuffle.
Yeah. So, so there could be that, you know? And I can empathize with that because I have my little edges that people hit once in a while and they don't even know they're hitting them. Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm trying to hit those edges right now, and none of this is working, Paz. I'm trying.
I'm not giving you ammunition.
I know there's nothing there to work with, right?
Oh, no,
but you do talk
there.
about you talk about living in the in between, right? Like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by living in the in between? Because I see that and I'm like, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say north of nowhere. Like north of nowhere with nothing to hang on to. It's kind of an exaggeration, but we talked in one of our conversations, because we've had a few, we talked about an awakening, like when the greyhound that chases that electric bunny catches it, it's like once you've broken the illusion, like what is there to strive for if that compulsion, like if you kind of broke the spell, like what happens then? Where do you go from there? And you could be drifting. So you can call it midlife, you can call it menopause, you can call it, awakening. Whatever you want to call it, the in-between space. There's names for it. There's actual names for there's a word that I recently learned, and it's like in that in between space.
So the in between space is between like very noticeable parts of your life or your identity, right? So like you're talking about like menopause and I don't know what's premenopause or something like that, womanhood or whatever. Like, is the in between space between those things?
It could be in between any. I mean, throw a dart at it. You can be going from teen to young adult. That stage where you're no longer under your parents' roof, or you're recently out of college, or you ended your relationship with your BFF because they moved away, or the boyfriend, or the job, or a health scare, or it could be anything in between, where just for a moment your grip on reality creates a little separation and you're like living in between that. And so your old life no longer quite, you're not grabbed like this with your old life, but you haven't quite discovered what that new space is going to be, if at all. And you're just kind of in this no man land. And so you're kind of still living from this paradigm, but
Yeah.
you've already kind of seen that that is not real, or if it is real, it's no longer aligned with your value system or your
Yes.
consciousness. And so you're there in the neighborhood because where else are you going to go? But
Yeah.
you don't belong, like you're a part of, it's not
Yes.
you anymore.
Sort of, exactly. That's what okay. So it's the, I don't know what I don't know how to exist right now because I'm between two things. I know I'm going to be a freshman, then a sophomore, but like, what is that tiny little thing between the two of those things? I can see that like creating like times where you kind of feel like you're not fitting in, right? Or being in a liminal space or uncertain
Liminal.
space.
That's it.
That's what you talk.
That's the word,
Okay.
liminal. Yeah.
And so what does living in those spaces, what has what in those spaces, what has it taught you about resilience and finding meaning in your life?
Well, that's what I've been, I don't want to say confronted with, but that's what it's brought forward is, I mean, it's been a long, long journey for me in this space because I've been here, you know, those refugee camps where you think
Yep.
you're only going to be there for a month or a week, and then like 7 years later you're still there. That's kind
Yeah,
of how
it's
I
like
feel.
what the fuck? Okay.
Yeah, like, yeah. So you start building community in there. You start finding everywhere you go, you know, like kids, you know, you uproot them from their home and they find a way to play with sticks, to play with other children, to, you know, to entertain themselves. You know, they make a home everywhere they go, right? 'Cause,
Yeah.
you know, you have to, like, it's like, I mean,
Yeah.
you could not, but I can't imagine that, you know, all of a sudden that nowhere, that space nowhere is your home. You learn how to make a home out of it. Maybe it's not like the home that it used to look like, you know, where
Yeah.
everything was more fixed and permanent, but it's still, you make an encampment, you might say, there.
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool because, you know, once you go and name that piece and it becomes a thing, then there's another liminal space that shows up. Like it's never quite finite, right? There are things that happen, new things get named, they become a thing, but there's still that in between space, right?
Right. So it's still nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that is very palpable.
What in between space are you in right now?
Well, I think I don't want to say it's the same space, but it still feels like it's still like in the, you know, north of nowhere. And it's I don't know, because it started the murmur started happening like when I was in my teens. I just didn't know what I was hearing. I was hearing something, I was sensing something, but I didn't know what to say. And it wasn't until I hit like about 36 that I straight up just shut the door on it. Like straight up shut the door on it, you know, because it was really it's kind of like Jumanji, the game Jumanji, where it's like the drums are coming from it and you hear it and then you lock it in a trunk because you don't want to deal with it, right?
Like
but it's just like you could hear the, like, yeah, you know, you could hear like
totally
the drums, right? That's how it was. And it's been happening for like, really, now that I look back, the clues were always there, but it really like that palpable drum like calling.
Exactly.
At
yeah,
36, I 36, 37, I noticed it. And I closed it because I knew that if I opened up that box, so much was going to, like, imagine Jumanji and all the elephants and everything coming out at you like that. That's what was going to happen. So I was like, because I was like at capacity trying to manage the unmanageable back then, right? Like literally like in somebody else's lane, you know, plus mine, plus theirs, you know, and all this stuff. And I had all these like, you know, imagine the little girl who's trying to keep the dam from rupturing with all the toes and the hands like that, right? Like trying to hold that together, and then Jumanji's like on me, right? Like, I'm like, I can't do this right now, okay? But that was the whole point, to squeeze me into such a state where I had to surrender. But I thought, you know, because I can be pretty resilient, you know what I mean? I can be pretty stubborn and pretty resilient, yeah. And so that's how it was for me. And then finally, like, I like something somehow, you know, imagine a stool with 3 legs, and I was like on 2, and then finally something just came out and said, you know what, she's not budging, and they just kicked the second one out from under me, and I was like, boom, I toppled. That's how it happened, and that was at 39, June 10th of was it? Yeah. 39. I'll just say it was 39. June 10th.
There you go. Amazing. Jumanji, Robin Williams, or Jumanji with The Rock?
Robin Williams.
Wow,
I didn't care for the second one so much. I love the characters, but the first one had my heart.
A purist.
It's like the original Jurassic Park 2. That was like the one.
It was. The original one was the one, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about spiritual psychology.
Mm-hmm.
You've spoken about your experience in spiritual psychology, having awakenings, and leading you into new territories.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we just talked about the liminal spaces, right? So how do you keep moving forward when nothing fit anymore and you like lost your old sense of self?
Well, one of the first things, not the first thing, but one of the main things in that space, I think for me, is dealing with the judgments of others, but mostly and mainly the judgments of self.
Okay, talk about that.
So when you're in the middle space, there's a
Mhm.
lot of, like, for example, I no longer have that fear and that dirty fuel that I'm running scared all the time from
Mhm.
scarcity. I mean,
Yeah.
it crosses my mind, and it is a concern, because obviously there's a reality that I'm living
Hmm.
into, and what I mean by that is retirement and not having kids and not being married, and like, so
Yeah.
I'm like, there is that reality, right?
Hmm.
What was the question?
Well, okay, I'm gonna ask the question in a second, but like the reality of not having kids, like it's like I'm
Well, it's a
seeing the full
factor.
circle. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a factor.
So the question has to do with your spiritual psychology and the breakthroughs that have happened as a result of that, and then this idea of just of your own personal evolution, going through sort of the evolutionary friction of growing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or feeling like nothing has fit anymore, or leaving that old sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question, I think that's the question, is sort of
That's not a
how do you,
question.
all right, homie.
All
Oh
right.
my God, you are not a virtuous friend right now.
Sorry.
Okay,
No, I
so
was listening for a question and it didn't come.
this is the question, all right, right? So the question
Hmm.
is like, how do you keep moving forward when nothing is fitting, like, or you're leaving your old self?
Actually, Mark, I just want to make a correction. I think that the actual awakening
Mm.
happened on Sunday afternoon at the Landmark Forum around 5 or 6 o'clock. That's when my awakening happened.
They don't
Now,
sponsor this, right?
no. And it didn't happen like this. One would think that it did because technically it did when it happened when it happened. So, yes, it happened like
I
this.
think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it was the days leading up to, and then I had it, I saw it, I felt it, and obviously I as the weeks went by, I went back into the grip of
Yeah. The
whatever it
old
is
model.
that you,
Yeah.
yeah, but I still knew that there was something that existed and was very real and happened, right? And then I went into USM, and the spiritual psychology for a few years, right? For a couple of years, for
Hmm.
a few years. And then that just kept the conversation alive, and it deepened it and it deepened it. And just because you have an awakening doesn't mean that you are able to identify. I was able to identify that how I constructed my life and the stories that I made, that I created, the
Yeah.
interpretations, and then how I gripped to them, and how I constructed an entire life and trained everybody around me to participate or get out of my life if you're not going to go along with what
Yeah.
my
Yeah. No,
story
I
that
got
I'm
it
creating, right? And I can be very convincing, right? So I can convince you of
completely.
boohoo and, whatever, right?
Or the
And oh,
NLP
yeah,
snaps.
right, all of that, right? Like, yeah, it's all very compelling, right? And so that's all still there, but I was aware that I had technology to be able to create that separation, to go, that's a story, right? Like, I now know that that's a story and that I'm at the source of it, even if I can't see where I did it, but I know that I did it. And
Right.
I'll
Right.
just have to stay with it. And then there comes a time where I actually see it when I create it, and I go,
Yeah.
holy shit, there it is,
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. But there's still, like, somatically, there's still stuff that gets triggered that I don't even have recollection of, that I feel from the past. And that's the stuff that I have worked with, the knee jerk reactions where I can't see where it's coming from. I just know that when you hit my knee, it goes up. And
Mm,
that's the
hmm.
stuff that I still work on. So I think awakening didn't make that go away. It just gave me access to something, but I'm still gripped by my past because some of it
Completely.
is trapped in my neurology, right?
Yeah. I mean, how many decades of, living your life, and then yes, there's this part where you're just like, holy shit, this is
Yeah.
wild. But then I
Yeah.
also have a sense of freedom because I'm not bound by or I'm not pulled back by my past. And it doesn't happen every single day of my life.
Right. Well,
But
it's not just
mhm.
me alone in the ring or in this dark room with these, like, thoughts just coming
Mhm.
at me, and I'm just like, oh, like, what is this thing, right? Now it's like, I know who you are. Like, I have some skills, I have some tools, I
Yeah.
have some tricks up my sleeve, and I can be with them in that room. Maybe turn
Yeah.
on a light, pull up a chair, let's play some checkers, let's talk about this, and have a relationship with it. right? Rather than just be in the corner and they're fully dominating the space.
Yes, I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah,
You know, one thing that's, there's number one, this is a fucking awesome interview. I hope you're having fun with it.
I am. I am.
Podcasting is fun, right? But from what I'm getting of talking to you, like not only that first time, we were talking about ham sandwiches, other stuff is right, to now, and from the way I've seen you the whole time, you're open about your challenges, right? You're very open around times where you felt confused or feeling alone, maybe cracks on the surface when things look perfect, right? Like, have you heard of the duckling thing, where like you see a duck and it's like so smooth across the surface of the water, then underneath it's fucking like going crazy, right? So
Hmm.
like, how do you find time or like what does living in this messy middle look like for you, right? Because you're a high fucking performer, right? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people who'd be like, I'd love to live a day in America's shoes, and then there may be parts of you who are like, this is a shit show or whatever it is, like that honesty about the challenges that you're facing. How do you live
Yeah.
and blend those things together?
Well, at first I was, I wanted to get out of it quickly. Like I just was like, okay,
Mm,
tapping my feet and looking at my watch, going, okay, come on,
yeah,
because we got shit to do, right?
yeah, we do.
And yeah, and then it wasn't going away. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, I do not want to go into a depression around this. I hope this is not what depression looks like. You know what I mean? If you don't know any better, you could. And I don't know if it's real depression. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I thought, am I going into a depression, or am I mistaking this space of nothingness for depression? And then I thought, well, what is depression? And it's a neurochemical, maybe reaction, maybe it's a point of
Yeah,
view, maybe it's a combination of. Anyway,
yeah,
and I thought, well, okay, I always like to go back to being heady about things in science. You know what I mean? Like, I think anything can be explained.
completely.
Yeah, and whatever can't be explained is just that we as humans don't have the technology for it yet, but it does make sense to something out in the universe. Like, it's
Yeah.
math. It may be
Yes.
higher math than we understand, but it's math. Like, there is no mystery here. It's understandable to something or someone out in the universe, right? It may not be to us or me, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. Like,
Well,
so no,
you lead. You
no,
made me lead the whole time.
no,
I hate
no,
when
no.
we
You
fight.
no. You do it.
No. Okay. Well, something. The one of the things that like has intrigued me is the middle ground between these being this perfectionist and then maybe handling your challenges. Is you use humor. You use. Are you
What?
plucking your
No,
eyebrows in
something.
the middle of this fucking talk?
No, something landed on my brow, on my eyelash, and so I was like,
God. Okay, on behalf of America, I'm ending the show right now. Like, fuck that. No, but like you're charismatic and humorous, hilarious. Like there's this fun vibe, and also at the same time there's this like, yeah, I've got challenges. And I'll fucking say it on a podcast. And I also and also at the same time I know that I look perfect to some of you folks out there.
well, I want to say I don't know about that, but I guess just like I look perfect, I may look messy to others, right?
Got it.
Yeah, because I think people will project on we will project anything and everything on people. For some
Hmm.
people, I might occur as really messy and like in between. What are you talking about? That to me, that sounds like blah blah blah. And for other people, that would be, oh, that's so great that's on that space. You know what I mean? And then all their stuff and their meaning will project on that. So I'm sure that they'll be saying that and a lot. Depending on who's watching, right?
Well, if that's the case, I acknowledge you for being able to show up very authentically and also having natural magnetism through all
Well,
of this.
there's two things I want to say about that, and I'll probably
Okay.
forget, but number one, you said about authenticity and being open and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. This is the water that I swim in.
Yeah.
This
Yep.
is my focus and my reason for being right now, of really getting to know myself and having a relationship with myself, which when I
Mhm.
was growing up, I didn't really have the container for that. I
Yeah.
cultivated other muscles and other skills, but it
Yeah.
wasn't this. And it was a real missing for me. And it became very apparent around the age of 30 when I started to try to be relational romantically, like take it serious and create something, that I started to see my shortcomings where I
Hmm.
hadn't cultivated those muscles, that I was really struggling. Ever since then, I've been trying to like kind of go back and create the things that weren't created, right? Like little by little.
Completely.
Yeah, you have to discover them first, and then you have to identify them, right? And
Yeah.
then you have to go, okay, what, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, I'm going to try this, and then slowly but surely I find my own flavor of it to work with it, right? And so there's that. So yeah, so but I just wanted to, number one, I don't walk around with, I don't, it doesn't occur to me that way. It's not where I'm coming from, is what I should say, where I don't come up with like, yeah, I'm like this, like that, and I've got my shortcomings and I'm willing to put it out there. Like that's too positional for me, and it's not that, like that conscious, right? Yeah. For me, it's like, I'm talking to you, and as far as I'm talking to you, I'm just talking to you. Like, and I'm just sharing myself with you, and you're like receiving me and back and forth, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way
Creating
it's
you, creating me, creating you.
Yeah, creating
right?
you, right. And I trust you. Your energy feels good and safe.
So you are tapping in.
Right. So that's what I'm doing here, right? So it's not that I'm trying to show or be or state, or it's just, I'm just reporting on how I'm occurring for myself and where I'm coming from. So it's not like, because that's not, it doesn't even occur to me like, fuck, and then I have this about me and I'm not afraid to say it. None of that. That's not even I don't traffic in that world right now. You know what I mean? Maybe when I was in my teens, I was like, and I had something to, now the other thing too is, I do want to say something, this vulnerability or this openness or whatever, this is just another Tuesday for me. This is not really for me being open and vulnerable. There's some stuff that's very tender and that's very real for me, and that I still keep very close and a little guarded, because it is so tender, that I don't share with everyone. I share with very few people, and it wouldn't be something that I would share on a podcast, because it is so, not because it's bad or anything, just because it's so personal to me, and that would be like a violation of trust to myself, right? Yeah. And I do honor that. I'm not human. I have I have my spaces where they're reserved for me, and I'm still working through that stuff, and so there's levels of vulnerability and openness, and to me it's the world that I traffic in. So for me, this is very comfortable to be open and expressed and share myself. And part of the reason why I choose to do it is because it gives other people permission to look within themselves and to share themselves with appropriate and safe people. Because some people just don't have the capacity to receive you. They'll make fun of you. They'll shut it down. They'll gossip about you, whatever. And if you don't have the skills to be able to hold that, you know what I mean? Not that is good or bad, or that you should tolerate that, but I'm just saying, like, if it's a check that you can't cash, then don't write it. You know what I mean? But for me, this is like, I feel very capable of, if something goes south or starts going south, I can put the kibosh on it and go, whoa, avocado. Yeah. Well,
I gotta tell you, I'm a little bit bummed that you're holding back, because I do want to talk about the time that you shanked a hobo in Philadelphia. I really wanted to talk about that time when you shanked a hobo.
That's for another time.
Exactly, right? There are two huge themes that have come up during this conversation. Yeah, drink, right? And like, for someone who's listening right now, how would you help someone who's trying to soldier through change, like, versus surrendering to it? So let me clear that question up. Like, what advice do you have for someone who's trying to soldier change versus surrendering to it? Because I heard you talk about surrender, then I've also heard you talk about these times in your life where you've soldiered through it. You've been resilient and had to walk through it, right?
Well, they're both tools. They're both tools. Surrender and soldiering too. They're both tools. One of the many things that I've learned is that you don't throw anything out. It's all useful. And for me, there's been a time where I spent like years cultivating this, so like soldiering through. And then there's been years where I've cultivated surrendering. And then there's been years where I've cultivated victimhood. And then there's been years where I've cultivated championing myself and others, right? And I used to think, well, that's no good, and I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm not going to be like this, or now I'm going to be like this. And I thought that you were supposed to get rid of it, and then what I found is that, no, like a color palette. You can combine colors and pull them at any given time. They become part of your palette. you know?
That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was the time where you invested time and there was a cost to you acquiring these tools, these skills, these ways of being. Why would you throw them out? They're useful, you know?
Yeah.
So that's one
So
thing.
it's like, oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so there's two things that if I was gonna start all over again this journey, and if I actually like went, okay, we're gonna strategize and go back in time, you know, what I would say is I would somehow drop in there in like a shape of a miracle in a book or a sign or something to myself, right? If I couldn't talk to myself, but I have to get the message across, which I think is how it works anyway, you know, or at least that's what I create sometimes,
Yeah.
you know. Signs, by the way, the calls are coming from inside the house always, right? It's not
Yup.
out there. It's the interpretation of the signs, right?
Yep.
Going back to the Zen garden, what it means to one person versus what it means to the other, right? So yeah. So what I would say is there's two pieces that I would work on: shame, or really getting to know the different faces of shame and what it looks like, because shame is the one thing that will keep you from looking inward. That's the gatekeeper.
God, that
Right?
hurts
That's
even
the
to hear
gatekeeper.
that.
Yeah, and it doesn't come as a distinct feeling of anger, sadness, emptiness, boredom. It doesn't come like that. It's like a soup of feelings, and it's this, like, they call it the morass, right? The morass. This blue blah, this leaking of energy, this you know, this boredom, this angst, this wanting to go reach for the potato chips, or wanting to go have sex with somebody for the dopamine hit, or, you know, like that. Like, it doesn't even occur to you as, it's just uncomfortable, you know? It's like all of a sudden you're on the Home Shopping Network, you know, shopping for your 15th pair of black heels, which you don't need, right? But it's just a thing, right?
It's just the dopamine hit.
Yeah. So trying to get away from yourself, from that feeling, right? So I would get really intimate, familiar with that. And John Bradshaw was, I remember when I went to my first seminar, I didn't even know, and he was talking about shame, you know, before anybody else was even, this was like, I was 19 or 20, and I bumped into him, and he was phenomenal. And he was talking about shame, and he, you know, I guess he used to be an alcoholic, and he had some other issues, and you know, and then that's part of that 12 step and that inventory, and kind of just being with yourself, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah. And I would also pair that with, you know, like wine and cheese. I would pair that with compassion and shame, compassion, curiosity, and shame, compassion, curiosity, and shame.
So
and then
good.
Normalizing that, and knowing that that's a human experience, and those are just pre-recordings to keep one socially acceptable, so that you're not ostracized. Is that how you say that? Yeah. And so that was instilled in you by the elders, the they committee inside of you, so that you wouldn't be shunned from the tribe, because that can cause death. So it's part of survival, right? And just kind of really studying that, so that you can see the mechanism at play and go, oh, that's just me protecting myself from not pulling away from the pact and still being part of the tribe. So I've had to contort myself into a pretzel and beat myself up into submission to stay connected to the tribe, because that's survival, right? So there's that. So the judgments against others, the judgments against yourself, the shadow work of really, it's a projection of yourself, aspects that you haven't quite come into, you know, like in alignment with about yourself, you know? So those are the things that I would start with. Those weren't revealed to me until many, many years into recovery, and into my work, my healing work, and into my awakeness. That made the difference, you know? But I think if I would have had that at the beginning, even if I wouldn't have been able to fully grasp it, because I think you have to get your ass handed to you a couple times to really get it, you know? But
more than a couple times. Yep. Yeah. I get you. I feel you.
Yeah, to have that foundation of like, okay, and just start really working with that and making it part of the recipe.
Completely. So good. I don't know if I didn't get to introduce you. I actually have a producer. His name is Manny. I'm going to introduce you in a second, but I have to go here. I love how we talked about basically in the very first 5 minutes so in the, you know, the very you know, first 5-10 minutes, we talked about like your preteen self, no marriage, those sorts of things, right? So, and I don't think that you're joking, half joking, right? Where you're looking for, talking about love and relationships right now, right? You joke about looking for someone who like has scuba gear, right? So wait, talk to me about this scuba gear metaphor. And how that relates to love and relationships.
Well, I think what I've discovered, and this is fairly recent, I mean, I kind of always have known it, but I think working with these metaphors really helps like create like substance to it. That it's not, I don't want to do it all the time, but I need somebody who comes with scuba gear, who's willing to go, those deep dives where you do those cave diving, you know what I mean?
Yes, I get it. Yeah.
So I'm metaphorically a cave diver. And I think that the relationship, not just romantically, but just that I feel more mutually fulfilled, or I feel fulfilled when they come with a scuba diving gear and they have the capacity. Now, I don't want to always go cave diving, but I'd like to have it as an option on the menu, right? So some people prefer to like snorkel on the top. Some people, they'll kind of swim and come up, right? And all of that is great. But for me, I want to find a tribe that has their scuba gear, and not just one scuba gear, but different ones for different depths, and their tanks and all the equipment.
Love it.
Yeah, and it's certified and ready to go at a moment's notice, to like go deep.
No, I completely get it. As I was reading that, I was like thinking about some guy knocking on your door to go out on like first date from like Tinder or something like that, right?
Slippers.
And he's in fucking slippers. He's got fucking
my dream guy.
On, and you're like, yo,
I'm ready to
we're gonna get married, make babies, I want to get married.
In a scuba suit, right?
Yep. But when you talk about it from that standpoint, I'm like, I'm in your tribe. I'm not into cursory, get to know people in, I don't know, for 6 months and then not really know what they're about, right? I think that I'm a part of that. I didn't think that we'd be talking the virtuous relationships, but we have a lot of different things that you were talking about. It's not hedonic or utilitarian is not bad. But like to have folks where it's just like, yes, let's dive in deep. Let's do a podcast. Let's go and have games.
No, I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's great. And also, Mark, I also want access to that light and fluffy, like kind of like silliness and like, just kind of Dumb and Dumber kind of. I want access to that too. I want access to all of it, really. Yeah. Okay.
All right, this wraps up another episode of the Joy Revolution podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And since you made it this far, go ahead and hit subscribe. Now, if you want to hear more podcasts, or if you're ready to engage with a community who will support and challenge you, if you're ready to start your own Joy Revolution, head on over to my online community, The Underground. The link is in the description. It's free to sign up. I've got a bunch of resources in there, including my own Joy Revolution course. So until next time, I'm Marc Cordon Creative. Dig deep, and I'll see you in the underground.